Hey y'all, it's Carol. And as it's still winter, even though it's warming up, in deference to last week's uh, snowstorm that we had, I thought I would paint a snow scene. I'm using acrylic, 100% cotton, which I really like. And I'm going to start by masking out my snow. You don't have to do this, but when you have a big tree with lots of branches, it's kind of a pain to try to paint around everything. So I've got this masking drawing gum, whatever you want to call it. It's got different names. I use a nib. This is called a nib. It just has a rubber tip. And I use that just for ease of application. You can use a paintbrush, but it kind of ruins a paintbrush. Now I've heard that some artists are able to take that paintbrush and put it in soap or something, and then it doesn't ruin it, but I've never had success with that. It seems like I always manage to ruin the paintbrush. So I just use my nib and I'm content with that. I hear some snow that has kind of been thrown on this side of the tree by the wind. And this branch comes out this way. When you use a nib instead of a paintbrush or an applicator, you do have to dip quite frequently, as you see that I'm doing. I had a wonderful applicator, this marker, but it dried out on me. In all fairness, it's like 3 years old, 4 years old maybe. So that happens, you know. If you don't use them up, they do dry out. So let's see here. Let's put this snow along here. I'm going to speed this up so you don't have to watch me do every little bit of this. Okay, I believe that'll do it. I'll pour the excess back in here. Save it for next time. And when it dries out right here, you just rub your finger around it and peel it right off. And when this dries, you just wipe that off. So first of all, I need to mix my background color. I'll tone down some Prussian blue with some Payne's gray, make a nice little blue-gray. A little richer because I'm going to pre-wet the paper. That works. And then I've got my green already softened up. Okay, pre-wet this paper. It'll just help it flow easier into all the lines. I'm not worried about going over my trees because having a little sky color in your trees is actually a good thing. This particular paper is on a block, so the edges are connected, sealed together, so it doesn't tend to warp too much, but it'll warp a little bit if I get too carried away with my colors. I'm going to go ahead and wet this snow a little bit just because I may as well put some of that down while I'm doing my sky. I try not to use this for paints, so this is my wetting one. I do have another one that I use when I use color, but I don't want that one to get dirty, so I'm just going to spread some color in here. Flat, I'll just put some color. I'm going to spritz a little bit, give it a little atmospheric feel. I'll put a little of that same color down in here, just reflecting the sky color down in my snow. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of this perylene green. I'm adding a little Payne's gray to it so it's not too terribly bright. But I do want some brush coming up back here. See how that's just a little bit of a color change, but not too much. that one with my smaller brush. You can add some different colors back in here. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of fall greenery left. And so we can add a little bit of that. Sometimes it's fun to splatter that. And I'm going to salt it a little bit too. And then we'll let that sit for a bit and see what happens. Okay, well, my background's dry and I've decided I can go ahead and work on the actual little cabin, since it's kind of not really touching anything because I've got that masking right there where the snow is. So I'm going to grab some burnt sienna and kind of color my cabin here. I had a little bit of Payne's Gray left on my brush, which works for me because it kind of makes a nice old wood color. You can add some more color back in it as you go. Sometimes it fades a little more where the sun reaches it, and so actually that accidentally turns out to be quite realistic. There's a gentleman not too far from here that has like, he sided his whole house in like this raw wood like this and didn't seal it or anything, and so over time this whole top is dark, and the more you move down and down on the wood, the lighter and lighter and more bleached out and gray it gets. It's kind of unique looking. Let's add a little more gray down here. I want to connect that before it dries so I don't have big lines or anything. Pre-wet that so that it flows smoothly. It's a little too dark. Wiping the excess off of my brush and just moving the rest of it around. Remember, I've got this cap that's going to be white up there, so I can go right up to it. And that creates my shadow on my snow. And you can add some little bits of interest while it's still wet and it moving around. I'll blend that just a little bit, just with my finger, so that it's not sharp spots. That's dry enough to put a shadow. Yeah, okay. So that was dry enough, so I put my shadow under there. It wasn't completely dry, which actually lets it move down just a hair, which makes a soft shadow versus a really sharp line. So that works for me. That's still too wet, so I'm going to wait to put my line over there. Down here it's dried just a little bit, so we're going to bring that wood slat shape coming up the side of the barn. This barn has vertical slats, as many of them are built as pole barns. These older barns, they're usually built as pole barns. I did that once back in Indiana. My ex and I built a pole barn as a barn just to save money, because it takes a lot less money to build a pole barn than it does a regular one. But it's just as sturdy. It's just not meant to look fancy, but it certainly does its job with as a garage or a barn. Okay, adding a little bit of upward texture here. I guess I could do this front snow while I am waiting. And I think I'm going to spritz that just to get it wet a little bit quicker. And put a little bit of that blue color from our sky down here, a little bit more. There's no sun out in this picture, so there's not going to be stark shadows like you would normally have to put, and that's kind of hard. Shadows from trees over snow can be a little bit complicated. So in order to make it an easier painting for you, I am not making it a snowy or a shiny day, but because it's overcast, it allows me to paint this tree without a bunch of shadows over the snow, and that's much easier, especially if you're a beginner. I know this looks a little complicated, probably maybe not super beginner friendly, but I'm trying to make it beginner friendly. If you are a beginner, I highly recommend doing this on a smaller scale. So start with a card. The first time I painted this particular picture, which is, I saw it the other day, and that's why it reminded me to do it again because I liked it. First time I painted it was actually on a 5x7 card. I sent it as a Christmas card to somebody. I don't remember who got it, but I like to paint originals for Christmas, although I try. I don't always get to it, but I do try to send family some original little painting cards. The years that I can pull it off. Something like that, you kind of have to start a lot earlier, really, don't you? It's like start about August, maybe, to try to get enough cards made. Let's see, there's the branch. Snow does occasionally have slightly darker areas. So I'm just going to throw a couple of those in there. And that's just a little more shadowed because I didn't want that too bright back there. Just adding a little bit of color to that snow back there. And then, let's see, let's go with another little one. Grab a little bit of that burnt sienna. Maybe put a couple little twigs coming up down here. That's still too wet. I probably should wait and do that after it dries a little more. I think I could put my darker burnt sienna down here now. You can take your bigger brush and kind of drag it down a little bit. It'll do the work for you, so you don't have to sit there and do it every little line. Now, right now, I'm doing a little bit of dry brush where I've patted off the dark burnt sienna, the wet, and just letting it sort of dry brush down here. It breaks up a little bit, gives a little bit of texture. Darker towards that top right there. Okay. I can add a little bit of red tones to that later, which I probably will do, but I want to let it dry first. And then if I want to add some red tones, I can do that. Back here in the shadows, I'm going to add a little more Payne's Gray. And bring it up a little bit with my angle brush. Okay. That did not, that should not be that close to the edge. I'm going to clean that up a little bit. It'll work better when it dries, but kind of lost my line to the cabin there. This is good paper. You can scrub on it a little bit when you need to. And then just clean up that edge right there. Okay. Grab my number 2 brush and go under my snow. Just that shadow right there. And I can go ahead and paint in this window right here. It's got some trim around it. And we're going to assume that it's dark in there. That's the shadow on the door, by the way. There's the shadow. Even though it's a sunless scene, there are some shadows still. Assume the trim around the door is kind of a grayish black, for which I'm using Payne's Gray. I want to make that look like it's a bunch of straw or hay in there, so giving it a little bit of texture. That works. That needs to have some color so it doesn't look like... Okay, this is good and dry. I'm going to remove a little bit of this salt, but I don't want to remove my snow yet. You can see a little bit of the effects there. A little bit in the sky from spritzing, a little bit in the trees right here with salt. Makes it look like it's got some snow on it. So it's always nice when you let the salt just sort of help you create some effects. Let's see if we can't get some trees in here. Now, trees are really kind of gray, but they're a warm gray. And that's why when they get wet with the rain, they look like, some of them look brown or reddish brown. And some of them look black when they're wet. And these trees are snow covered, and so they're pretty much are, black. Or pretty close to black. I'm going to pre-wet this a little bit just so that everything flows freely. Maybe not necessarily all of it, but at least most of it. This is just burnt sienna with some Payne's Gray. And there's a little blue in the sky from earlier. This needs to be fatter. Remember, your tree can't be fatter at the top than it is at the bottom. So remember to even that out as you If you notice the top is a little fat, you got to even the bottom out. Or widen the bottom out, not even. This is sort of a brownish gray. It's going to be darker by the time I get done with it, but I probably need to add a little bit of blue to this just to make it look darker. Wow, that's dark. That was a Payne's gray and burnt sienna make a wonderful black and watercolor. Right under the snow. I want to make sure it's black. It's always darkest right under that. And right up here, there's a branch. And right under there. I'm going to add a little bit of salt to the fatter parts of the tree to give it some texture. But I can't do it while it's too wet. It'll play with it too much. So I got to wait until it dries out a little bit. When I did this one the first time, it was a 5x7 card. So it's just a little different when you're doing it bigger. Gonna add some blues in here. Sometimes if you spritz a little bit at this point, you'll get a little bit of bleeding along the sides of the... I think I had a little alcohol in that too. Oops. But it will give you some nice rough edges, which is kind of makes the tree really interesting. I'm going to do that right here too. I'll show you what I mean right there. See how the edges are a little bit rough where the sprinkled water was? I really love it when it does that. I'm throwing in some blue from time to time just to keep this interesting. And this side is probably ready for a little bit of salt. Raw sienna in here every now and then just for interest. Now before it completely dries, I want to scratch it a little bit. This comb seems to work best for me. Just scratch a little bit of texture into this tree. Just in the thicker branches, the narrow ones aren't going to have that much texture. But the thicker parts of it are going to have quite a bit. Depending on the level that your paints are at, some of it is actually going to wind up lifting some paint, and some of it scratches, and the wetter paint goes down into it, which is makes it very interesting. And then the salt is creating a little bit of texture for us too. So all in all, we're not looking for perfect tree texture here. We're just trying to hint at the fact that there is some texture. And I go across some times because there are, especially if it's an oak, this could be an oak, there are some cross hatches. It's not totally straight bark. And so this just hints at that. Some people do 4s. That's how they do their oak bark. That's fine, however you do it. Okay, good enough. I do have a big branch that comes down here. It almost, oh, 2 big branches. Okay, that one right there has a lot of snow on it. I'm getting some nice texture over here between the spritzing and the salt. Thinking while the tree is drying, I want to put a little more color back here in this area. Make the trees just a little bit darker. Not that dark. Okay, same thing right here. Just going to darken some of these areas in the woods a little bit. If I'd have gotten it darker to begin with, I wouldn't have had to do this. But I think that makes it a little darker so that my I just want to make sure that everything else stands out. when I put the snow on top of this roof, or when I reveal the snow on top of this roof, I want to make sure it stands out. And you can see there is a forest behind the snow on this roof. So I could tell I did not get that dark enough to accomplish that. So I have to help it along a little bit. Make sure that I show that there is a forest behind there. And then I see that I forgot another branch right here. Okay, there's my nice liner. And we can add some smaller little twigs off of these guys. Make it look a little more realistic. Oops. Looks like I forgot that was wet. There's another branch I forgot. I have to come at that with a bigger one. Okay. Probably has to wait for tomorrow. I just don't know that I'm going to get much on these branches at this point. Maybe a little dry brush. But not dry brush now that I sprayed it, I guess. Oops, put too much water on that. Wait for that to dry and repaint those branches. Actually, I just patted it, so it's probably fine. Nope, it wasn't. I gotta wait for that to dry a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit of red on this. I just think it needs... Whoa, that's a lot of red. I didn't want that much red. Just a hint. Just a hint. Drag it down a little bit. Just to... Almost like a wash, a dry wash. Give it a little bit of personality. Oops, I got into my snow. I didn't mean to do that. Can use little pH markers if I have to. Well, you never want to paint all the slats, but you do want to hint at the fact that there are slats and cracks and that there are boards next to each other. But you don't want to have to paint them all in. That sort of, you got to leave something for the eye to fill in. And the eye will fill it in. And that's what makes it interesting. If you paint it all for it, it may as well just be a photograph, which is fine. That's another form of art, but that's not what I'm going for here. I want to give a hint and let the eye finish the rest of it. And my stuff is already detailed enough. I don't need to overdo it. This is in the shadows, in the deep shadows of the snow, so I just want to make sure that it's nice and dark down here by the snow down there. And I have to darken that shadow a little bit on the shadow side of this garage or barn. This side should be a little darker too. When I take all of this snow off, I'm going to have to shadow the snow. You have to put some shadow onto the snow so that it doesn't look like it's, there's just this stark white blob. So that will be fun also. In the meantime, I think I can put some shadow under the snow with a little blue and Payne's gray. Just make sure that right under where the snow hits these bigger branches, we have a nice crisp shadow. And that will help give it a bit of a 3D impression. Some of it is already really, really dark, and so that's fine. But in the places where it isn't, we're going to put a little bit of shadow. Okay. I've got quite a bit of this blue in the trees, so I feel like I need to throw a little bit of blue in here somewhere. Oh, maybe in the shadows of the barn, that would be good. There we go. That looks better. You just got to share that color so that it's not showing up just in one place. There we go. Okay, I'm going to let that dry till tomorrow. Well, this is the next day. This is a rubber masking remover, but any rubber eraser will work. I am removing the masking from our snow. And I can tell already that right here, when I didn't put any color above it, then you can't tell where the snow is. It's just without some color above your snow, you can't tell that it's snow. That's why I was going above this branch right here yesterday and putting some snow or some color in the snow above it, because I wanted you to be able to see the snow sitting on the branches. So I'm going to have to somehow identify this lower snow that didn't get that treatment yesterday. There's our roof line. Nice and clear. There it is. I thought I felt something. You can usually feel it. If you got a little masking left, you can feel it. So anyway. So what I'm going to do now is grab some of this, the sky color that's a little bit of a snow shadow color, which is really essentially the same as the sky color. A little heavier on the Payne's Gray. And we're just going to cover the snow a little bit where it meets the branch, just to give it that 3D feel. In these bigger areas where you can see a little more detail, I'm just adding a little color to make it more interesting. A little eye candy every now and then. Okay, I am going to put a little color on this background snow. I think I'm going to change it up, make it just blue. So that you can see where the top of the snow on these branches is, because otherwise it doesn't really mean much. There, that helps that snow stand out. Sometimes you do a painting and you plan it all out, and sometimes you don't know these things are going to happen until they happen. So just be flexible. Be willing to move stuff around and reshift and add some color where you need to, and take away a little color or lift off. That's how we do it with watercolors. Whenever you need to, you just got to be flexible, because it's a creative process. And sometimes you need to shift and you go, you know what? I can't see my snow. My sky has to be darker. So that's what I'm doing. And because these squirrel hair brushes have a lot of, they hold a whole lot of water. So I don't even have to refill it very often. And it's really got a considerable amount of water in it. Okay, I'm much more content with how well my snow is standing out now. And we still have all these nice things that went on, and I can still spritz my sky and get some effects in there with my new layer of color. Put a little bit right in there. There, that's better. know why that is white right there. I guess I must probably bumped something when I was putting my masking down. Okay, I'm good with that. I'm going to touch up a couple of these branches that kind of got lost in the mix. Probably should have a branch right there where that fell off. Okay, see that little spot right there where it looks like I spritzed a little too much? I could leave that alone, or I could fix it, and I'm opting for fixing it. Let's see which is the right tool. That scrubber. Here's a little scrubber brush. It's actually meant for removing, and because this is good paper, I can do it. There wasn't a bunch of layers on there. If you have multiple layers on, sometimes this doesn't work very well. But as long as you don't have a boatload of layers that are already set, and you've only done one or two things on there, you can usually scrub up a little something like that sort of got messy or whatever. I think I'm happy with the rest of it. We need to put a little bit of shadow in the snow right here. There. And right there. And I'm going to soften this edge just a little bit so that it's actually the scrubber is probably a better tool for that. I just want to soften that just a little bit where it meets up with where the sun is hitting it. You can do this with a regular brush too. I just happen to have a scrubber handy, so I'm scrubbing. I just didn't want that harsh line in between my lighter color and the brightness of where the light hits the snow. I see that this is a little tilted a little bit, so I'm going to straighten out that right there so that it doesn't look tilted. The snow can be falling tilted, but the actual frame needs to be straight. And then you can always touch up your shadows a little bit if you feel it needs it. I think I'm good with that. I was thinking it'd be fun to put some footsteps going into the snow. I haven't decided if I want to do that. Add a little shadow down here towards the bottom of the haystack. A little shadow down there as well. Just putting in some shadow right down here where the barn meets the snow because I felt like it wasn't dark enough down towards the bottom there. Not defined enough. Well, I think that's done. So that you enjoyed watching that, and maybe you'll go give it a try. You could put a little redbird right here, or a little cardinal or something, sitting on one of these little branches. That would be a little bit of interest or something if you want. You could put some little footsteps going to the barn. So anyway, make it interesting, make it your own. But I do hope that you give it a try. Don't forget to check out paintingtogether.com. I have tutorials on there, and at carolrobinking.com in the store you'll see my art kits for acrylic paintings. It has everything included. You just need yourself, a little bit of time, a cup of coffee, and a bowl of water to clean your brush, and you're good to go. So check those out, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.